Okay, good morning. Welcome back. We're on deck. We're Prep Test 86, second logical reasoning section, and we'll begin with question number 11. Oh, Shelby, how you doing? How you doing today? You're on camera. You're on deck. All right. The issue in question number 11, the reasoning in the argument is flawed. So again, you want to articulate the flaw before you begin even considering the answer choices. To be considered for this year's Gillespie grant, applications must be received in Gillespie City by October 1st. Got it. You know, it can take up to 10 days for regular mail from Greendale to reach Gillespie City. Got it. So, if Mary is sending an application by regular mail from Greendale, she will be considered for the grant only if her application is mailed 10 days before the due date. This is really all about reading textually, because you're going to read into that and you're going to get it wrong if you read into it. That conclusion is Mary's going to be successful only if her application is mailed 10 days before the due date. That means 10 days. That means if she were to mail it 8 days before the due date, it would not get there successfully. And so the flaw is that the argument's conclusion mistakes the prior clause or expression that it can take up to 10 days as saying it must take exactly 10 days. So, you know, the wording is the wording, but that's the flaw. Okay. A is the flaw that the argument does not establish that Mary is applying for the Gillespie grant or mailing anything from Greendale. No. B is the flaw that the argument does not determine how long it takes express mail to reach Gillespie City from Greendale. Not about express mail, but regular mail. No. C, does the argument does not consider that the minimum amount of time it takes regular mail from Greendale to reach Gillespie City, and that is correct. The argument fails to take into account that it may not take 10 days, which is the maximum period of time. It can take up to, means that's the max, right? It fails to take into consideration the minimum. So you would stop reading. Again, you stop reading on C. We'll do D and E because we're on video. D, does it presume without providing justification, which just means assumes? Does the argument assume that if Mary's application is received in Gillespie City on October 1st, she will satisfy all the other requirements of the Gillespie grant application? No, because the conclusion is it'll be considered, not that it'll be approved. And E, does the argument overlook the possibility that Mary cannot be certain that her application will arrive in Gillespie City unless she sends it by express mail, and that's just silly. So the answer to question number 11 is C for Caligula. Let's take a look at question number 12. The issue posed in question number 12: which one of the following, if true, provides additional evidence in support of the hypothesis that the Amazon River once flowed into the Pacific Ocean? Okay, so we'll stop for a second. We'll give you a hypothesis, which is that the Amazon River once flowed into the Pacific Ocean, and we want to support that hypothesis. Got it. What do I have here? You know, the Amazon River flows eastward into the Atlantic Ocean from its source in the western part of South America. So again, I'm stopping for a second. I'm visualizing. I kind of see South America, and I see the Amazon, and I see going eastward into the Atlantic from the west side. Okay, got it. The land through which the Amazon flows is now cut off from the Pacific Ocean to the west by the Andes Mountains. So again, I'm stopping for a second and say, well, here's the Amazon, and now the Andes Mountains are here, cutting it off from the Pacific Ocean. All right? Yet certain freshwater fish that inhabit the Amazon are descended from now extinct saltwater fish known to have inhabited the Pacific Ocean, but not the Atlantic. So a lot of words in there. Again, stopping, I need to understand it. So, but here we're talking about there are freshwater fish in the Amazon now, right, who are descendant from saltwater fish, all right, known to have inhabited the Pacific and not the Atlantic Ocean. So if there are freshwater fish in the Amazon descended from saltwater fish from the Pacific, that's creating that connection, right, to the theory. All right, let's see what we have here. For this reason, some scientists hypothesized that the Amazon once flowed into the Pacific Ocean. So, the evidence that the Amazon once flowed into the Pacific Ocean, right, so it's on the other side of the Andes, are these saltwater fish, right? And the saltwater fish appear to be the ancestors of, right, the present freshwater fish in the Amazon. So you want to make that connection to strengthen the hypothesis. Hey, you strengthen it by saying, in many cases, species of freshwater and saltwater fish that share certain characteristics do not in fact share a common ancestor. I have no clue how, if you really understood this argument and you're really applying IRAC, you'd ever pick A, because that's not what the argument is saying. So if you did do that, you need to go back and reflect, and let's get to B and see what B says. Most of the fossilized remains of the now extinct saltwater fish from the Pacific Ocean date to a period prior to the formation of the Andes. So let's consider that for a second. Most of the fossilized remains of the now extinct saltwater fish from the Pacific, those guys, date to a period prior to the formation of the Andes. Well, that does help the theory, right? Because now you're creating in other words, it's the Andes that's cut off the Amazon, right? That's the theory, right? So if you have there saltwater fish, the fossilized remains of saltwater fish in the Amazon, right? Then that is consistent with, at one time, the Amazon flowed from the Pacific to the Atlantic. So B does definitely help the argument. I'll keep reading. C. Many species of fish that inhabit the Atlantic Ocean are related to fish species that are known to inhabit the Pacific Ocean. Well, that's not really helping me a whole lot. Again, I've got saltwater fish, I've got freshwater fish in my hypothesis, and so that, both oceans are saltwater, so no, that's not really helping me. D. The Andes Mountains extend from the northernmost to the southernmost extremes of the South American continent. Who cares? And E. There are very few species that are known to be able to survive in both fresh and saltwater fish. Again, that's not helping me. So the answer to question number 12 is B for Brutus. Let's take a look at question number 13. Which one of the assumption is required by the columnist argument? So now I have an assumption issue. Let me see what I have here. Columnist. Banning performance-enhancing drugs, PEDs. Banning PEDs from sports will not stop their use. Seems like that's the conclusion. So banning PEDs will not stop their use. So let me now see how the argument proceeds. They provide too big a competitive advantage. Okay, I got that. That's reasoning. And top athletes will do whatever it takes to gain a big competitive advantage. And that's reasoning. So PEDs should be allowed, but only if administered under a doctor's care to make sure they are taken only in safe doses. Okay, so we're going to regulate the PEDs because we can't really stop athletes from using them. We're going to regulate them, okay, and now they're going to be safe. And then when handled in this fashion, the health risks from PEDs disappear. Okay, so that's how we're not going to stop their use. What we're going to do is make it safe to use them. And that argument requires the assumption that when you make them safe, you continue the competitive advantage. In other words, this was about, if we go to the second sentence, they provide too big a competitive advantage. That's the reasoning for why you're not going to stop their use. They provide too big a competitive advantage. So that's what has to be addressed. And it's apparently addressed in this argument by saying, well, we can do that by making them safe. But then you assume that whatever is involved in making them safe continues the competitive advantage. And that'll be the answer. I don't know the words, but that's all that should be done before you ever look at an answer choice. Okay, so is it an assumption A, spectators would not lose respect for athletes who know they're taking PEDs? This got nothing to do with this. B, PEDs would not improve the performance of some athletes more than others. It might. That's not what this is about. C, athletes do not take PEDs thinking they help performance in cases in which they do not help. I don't have a clue what they think. D, athletes currently using PEDs cannot find doctors willing to prescribe them. And, that's just got nothing to do with this argument. Well, more specifically, it's got nothing to do with an assumption underlying the argument. And E, using PEDs at unsafe levels does not create a big competitive advantage over using them at safe levels. So if you've done the work, you're fending off the crap. You're just fending it off because you've already formed. You're not trying to guess the answer. You're just forming the contours of like what continent does this writer have to end up on. So the answer to 13 is E for Euphrates. Take a look at question number 14. 14, Cora's claim, and here's the claim, so you would be highlighting this if you can, that it is natural for humans to use technology to affect changes on the environment. So that's the claim. It is natural for humans to use technology to affect changes on the environment. That's my claim, sorry. Plays which one of the following roles in her response? Okay, so a little bit different here, a little bit twisty. Okay, Cora's going to respond to Max, use this phrase, and then we're being required to explain the role in the argument. Why is she using that phrase in terms of responding to Max? Here's Max. As evidence mounts showing the terrible changes wrought on the environment by technology, the conclusion that humans must return to a natural way of living becomes irrefutable. So let's stop. Let me take in what Max said, and Max is saying to me. He starts out by saying we're given as a fact that there is evidence mounting that shows the terrible changes wrought on the environment by technology. So that's given to us as a fact, and then the conclusion, Max's conclusion, that humans must return to a natural way of living becomes irrefutable. Got it. Cora responds. It is natural for humans to use technology to affect changes on the environment. So, of course, saying it is natural for us to, because again, Max is saying you got to return, right, to what is natural. And Cora starts off giving us this phrase that we're required to break down. She starts off by saying, but it is, the only word we're missing there is but. It is natural for humans to use technology to affect changes on environments. Humans have, so that's her conclusion. Humans have used technology in that way for many thousands of years, and therefore your conclusion is misguided. So the ultimate conclusion is your criticism is misguided, but that's based on the conclusion that Cora draws that, in fact, it is natural for humans to use technology. So why is she bringing that up? She's challenging what Max understands to be natural. So Max understands it to, when you say we have to return to a natural, you're saying that what we're doing is unnatural. And what Cora is saying it's not unnatural to use technology this way, it's natural. So again, I don't have the words, but that's where this is going. A, the claim, it is used, this is Cora's claim, it is used to suggest that the alleged cause of terrible changes to the environment cannot be correctly described as unnatural. And that's the answer, right? That is used to suggest that the alleged cause of terrible changes, which is what Max is saying, right? That the alleged causes to the environment, which is our use of technology, cannot be correctly described as unnatural because Cora is saying it is natural. So that, again, that's the answer. Keep reading, that's fine, but A is going to be the answer. B, it is used to suggest that humans have benefited from many of the changes that they have wrought on the environment. Well, it's not saying that, it's simply saying it's natural. It is simply natural for us to use technology to affect changes on the environment. That's all. They're good, they're bad, it's just natural. C, it is used to suggest that Max's conclusion that technology has wrought terrible changes on the environment has not been supported. Well, actually, that's not Max's conclusion. Max's conclusion is that we must return to a natural way of living. That that humans must return to a natural way of living becomes irrefutable. It becomes irrefutable because of the information that preceded it in Max's argument, which is the terrible changes wrought on the environment by technology. So it's not used to suggest that Max's conclusion is not supported. Max's conclusion is supported. It's used to simply reject Max's conclusion. I say Max's conclusion is unnatural, and Core's conclusion is natural. But I love C. C is a great wrong answer. If you got C, if you pick C, that I think it's a great wrong answer. D. It is used to suggest that the conveniences of modern life will make it difficult for humans to return to a natural way of living. I have no clue why you would pick D if you actually understood this. And E. It is used to suggest that it is a mistake to take the environmental changes caused by technology to be a moral issue. That's not why it's being used. It's simply being used to challenge the prior assertion that this is an unnatural thing to do. It's not, according to Core, it's natural. So let's hold there, 11 through 14. The answer to 14 is A for Augustine.